Hey, what's up, former Scroll Hands? And I'm bringing you some COD 4 gameplay. It's a game of domination on backlot, and the focus of this video isn't going to be the gameplay, it's just going to serve as a backdrop. Today I wanted to talk about a top 5 series. I started it up on the forums a couple months ago, in which I present a topic and I say my top 5 favorite things in that category, and people respond with similar things, what their personal top 5 favorite is in that area. And I thought I'd bring it over to a video. And today I want to talk about my top 5 favorite first-person shooter multiplayer games. These may not be the absolute best of the best. I haven't, there's a lot of games I haven't played, but these are just the games that I've played in my life that I've enjoyed the most. And I'm also focusing on just multiplayer aspects, so I'm not incorporating single-player first-person shooters as well, just the multiplayer part. What would get honorable mention is a PS2 game called SOCOM 1. It was a third-person shooter released in 2002, and it was the first online multiplayer shooter that I played on consoles, and it provided 3 major game modes. It was something called Suppression, which was basically a form of TDM in which you didn't have any respawns. Extraction, where you work to rescue hostages and bring them to a safe zone, and Demolition, where you work to destroy an enemy base with an explosive charge. My preferred mode was Extraction, and I actually got in the top 500 on the world leaderboards for this game. It was an awesome tactical shooter, and since I'd never played any shooters online on consoles before up to that point in time, it was a unique experience that I really enjoyed. The reason it doesn't make my top 5 list is because by the end of this game's life cycle, it was plagued by hackers and cheaters. Almost every game saw me combating somebody with God mode, the ability to fly, or the ability to phase through walls. So it was a great all-around game, but just by the end of it, it was ruined by cheaters. My 5th favorite shooter ever was Halo Combat Evolved. The game that started the hit franchise was released in 2002. I imagine most of you know the general gameplay mechanics that has made Halo such a successful franchise. One of the things that made this game so enjoyable for me was the fact that your character had replenishable shields, which allowed you to go in and out of combat more often, and you wouldn't have to worry about searching for health packs all the time, so it kept the pace fast. It was also the first time I ever played 4v4 on consoles, just because you had the ability to hook up via LAN, so I was able to do 4v4 combat, and one of my favorite modes was Capture the Flag on the map Blood Gulch. The reason this game doesn't rank higher on my list is I never owned the game, or I never owned Xbox or the game, and I didn't start playing it until a couple years after release, so I didn't play it often at all, just a small handful of times, but every time I did play it, it was a complete blast. 4th on my list is one of the most popular competitive shooters of all time. I imagine Counter-Strike is on the top of a lot of people's lists, especially when it comes to first-person shooter games on PC. I started playing Counter-Strike with Source, and there are 2 big versions of Counter-Strike out there. There's Counter-Strike Source and, Counter-Strike 1.6. Source was built off of the Half-Life 2 engine, and Counter-Strike 1.6, which is just the patch number, was built off of the original Half-Life. Now, it has 2 core modes and a wide variety of variants and mods that were created by the user community, but the 2 core modes involved a group of terrorists trying to destroy one of 2 pre-designated areas, and that's my computer. It's similar. It's very similar to Search and Destroy. You don't get any respawns whatsoever, and you're working to plant a bomb in one of 2 locations. And if the terrorists manage to do that, they win the round. And the second game mode, counter-terrorists work to extract hostages from terrorist control and bring them back to a safe zone. And it's round-based, just like Search and Destroy is in Call of Duty. And you gain money based on your performance during that round. So if you get a lot of kills, you'll get more money, and if you win, you get more money than if you lose. And at the start of each round, you can use that money to buy equipment such as flashbangs or armor, or you could buy guns, and the more powerful guns cost more money. In addition, Counter-Strike had a lot of different game modes that were created by the community. The Wager Match gun game from Black Ops has origins from a similar mode presented in Counter-Strike. Again, the reason this game does not rank higher on my list is because I didn't start playing it until a couple years after it was released, and I just never had a whole lot of time to play it that often. But if you guys are a fan of Search and Destroy from Call of Duty, I definitely recommend giving this game a try. It's out on Steam, and I believe it's available both for PC and Mac. This next game could be considered the godfather of FPS games on consoles. GoldenEye for N64 was absolutely amazing when it was first released back in 1997. Graphically, it looked great. It may not stand up very well to today's standards, but back then for consoles, it was visually impressive. And although for multiplayer it didn't support online or LAN, it did provide 4-player split screen, and that's all you really needed to enjoy this game. It also presented a lot of different game modes, including the traditional free-for-all, You Only Live Twice, which was a variant of free-for-all in which you can only respawn twice, and the Man with the Golden Gun. And that game mode worked by putting the golden gun somewhere on the map. Everybody would fight over it, and if you had the golden gun, you could kill anybody anywhere on their body with one bullet. The game also had a wide array of levels and gun presets, so things like slappers only, explosives. So there's a lot of ways of customizing your gaming experience. And there was modifiers that you can get based on how well you performed in the single player game that you can use to change how multiplayer played. So two examples are paintball mode, which would put little paintball splatters instead of bullet holes, and DK mode, which made you look like Donkey Kong. Everyone had long arms and big heads. And although it may not look like much today, for its time it provided an extremely enjoyable experience unmatched by most games that were out on the market for that time. Number 2 on my list is my favorite PC shooter ever, and it was released back in 2005. Battlefield 2 worked towards trying to create an all-engulfing war experience and putting it into a first-person shooter. This game should not be confused with Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, which was a completely different game, and that was released for consoles only. Battlefield 2 was PC only, and it had 32 versus 32 player combat and maps ranging from large open settings in the wild to small urban environments. This game included vehicles like APCs, jet fighters, tanks, and jeeps. It also incorporated a class-based system that allowed you to play in a variety of different styles. Classes included Sniper, Spec Ops, Support, and Engineer, to name a few. There were a total of 7 classes, all with differing strengths and weaknesses. And one of the greatest strengths of this game was the sheer amount of variety whenever you were playing. If you wanted to try being a jet fighter, you could do so. If you wanted to command the battlefield by giving orders of where to attack, where to defend, or place artillery strikes, you could do that as well. If you weren't big into, or you weren't strong at first-person shooters, but you wanted to play a support role, either by taking out tanks, healing your teammates, or providing ammo, that was also an option as well. And even with so many of these variables, the game flowed extremely well and was action-packed just because you had 32 versus 32 player combat. Battlefield 2 still remains my favorite multiplayer shooter on PC, and it's a big reason why I'm so stoked about Battlefield 3. And my number 1 favorite multiplayer first-person shooter of all time? Well, you're looking at it. COD 4 introduced such a different formula to what I was used to up to that point in time that I just became an immediate fan once I started playing. From the perk system to the ability to customize your starting weapon loadout to the overall pacing, COD 4 was a complete blast to play when it was first released, and it continues to be up into this day. And one of its biggest strengths is its overall variety and how it can cater to different playstyles. So if you wanted to hang back and be a sniper, there's different classes and perks you can use to do so. If you wanted to be sneaky and kind of creep around the sides of the map and catch people off guard, you can tack on dead silence, cold-blooded, and a silencer on your weapon. If you're a run and gunner, you can tack on an SMG and put on extreme conditioning. So I mean, whatever playstyle you had, there was a way to cater towards it. Even in Battlefield 2, there was preset classes. You could change the weapons, but you couldn't change things that might help your playstyle. But in here, if there's a certain type of playstyle you had, there was ways of changing your perks that would strengthen that style. Now, there were gripes associated with this game. For instance, triple frags, Juggernaut, Martyrdom, and the M16. But for me, triple frags were only really a problem on the map Wetwork, and that did get kind of bad because people would spam them all over the place. But that was the only map that triple frags really bothered me. Juggernaut was a big issue for snipers, but I didn't snipe too often in Call of Duty 4, so for me, Juggernaut wasn't a problem. Martyrdom was probably the biggest thing I would complain about. But once you played it enough, it almost became second nature to know to run away from a dead body or to hit RB to chuck it away right as it's falling. It wasn't a foolproof plan. I think right here, actually, I get killed by some martyrdom. But it wasn't the worst thing in the world, especially when you compare it to other Call of Duty games. And finally, the M16 was an extremely effective long-range weapon, but it wasn't an all-purpose weapon. It only really was effective at medium and long distances. But in close quarters combat, if you had like an MP5, an AK-74U, or a P90, you would normally win in close-range combat. So there were ways of countering it. So you can say that later games improved upon COD 4, but I don't think any subsequent COD has been as truly innovative as COD 4. It was a game that started the franchise's success, and it's easy to see why. But these are my top 5 favorite shooters. I know I mentioned first-person shooters before, but I said SOCOM, so these are my top 5 favorite multiplayer shooters. And let me know in the comments what your top 5 favorite shooters are. And as always, take it easy.